Belle Aubry is not the only public enemy of Eugenia Cooney, and that is something that as a collective we need to start discussing more. I've seen plenty of videos in recent days of people kind of shunning Belle Aubry, or Pastel Belle as she used to be known, for her content on Eugenia Cooney. And there's a couple of things that I've noticed. One is that because Belle has become kind of a larger platform and she rose very quickly, especially during all the Davi Vanity stuff, she has kind of taken the brunt of the criticism over people, trying to speak out against Eugenia Cooney and trying to get her kicked offline. And although a lot of what people have said is valid, they're kind of leaving out a key point that I find particularly harmful when it comes to Eugenia and other content creators who happen to have an ED. On top of that, as I've kind of alluded to already, Belle is not the only person doing things like that, and if we're going to hold her accountable, we need to hold everyone accountable. So in this video, I'm going to be discussing the extra side of the Belle stuff that's going on, the part of her content that I have deemed extremely problematic that I haven't really seen people speak about that much, and I'm going to be discussing how social media as a whole has played an enormous part in everything going on right now. Let's start off simple. Why has Belle Aubry gotten so much more criticism and so much more hate and angry videos thrown her way than other people who have been discussing Eugenia Cooney for a lot longer? The short form answer to that is that it's kind of in the same family of issues that cause people to get a lot more upset over Shane Dawson and how his cancellation was more effective than, say, Jeffree Star. It's because one of the reasons people decided that they loved Pastel Belle when she was Pastel Belle so much was because of her personality. Not only did she realize that there was a need for someone to give victims of harm of different kinds, sorry, YouTube is stupid, harm of different kinds, a platform to tell their stories, because Chris Hansen had kind of dropped the ball on that. But the way she chose to go about it was so amazing. She was kind, she was compassionate, even though some of the stories the victims were telling was stories that could upset her or potentially trigger her. She knew it was more important to put her own feelings aside and give that person that platform that they needed to ensure that this didn't happen to someone else in the future, and to give them a voice and make them feel like somebody out there cared about what happened. She always came off very sweet, very understanding, and very humble. And generally speaking, after she talked to these victims, she would even go as far as to try to give them, as well as the people who watched her content, some kind of resolution. It wasn't just, oh, let's talk about this and hope you feel better. It was, let's talk about this. Now, here are some resources that you can potentially use to get through all of what happened to you in the future. She was filling a void in YouTube for survivors, and that was a wonderful thing. Now, as that content kind of slowed down, and unfortunately people weren't paying as much attention to the Davi stuff, and that kind of hit a standstill because of the Chris Hansen issues, she decided that it would be smart to do commentary. Now, a lot of people have been calling her a tea channel now, so let's talk about what's the key difference between a tea channel and a commentary channel. A tea channel is something like what Nick Snyder does. He just kind of announces any YouTube drama, any big thing going down on YouTube, not just drama, even like the huge stuff, but like a sensationalist news reporter, he has to grab the content as fast as possible before anyone else and upload it, sometimes even before he even gets the full story, to ensure that he is the first one people hear discussing it. And that can be kind of a positive and a negative thing. It's positive because of the fact that you're getting different chunks of the story as it's developing, so you get to, kind of gain a better understanding over time, but it's also very detrimental sometimes, especially when it's something that isn't just stupid high school drama. It's like something that's a huge deal, because in trying to just hurry up and punch out a story as quickly as you can end up leaving out key details that are very, very important and causing a lot of misinformation to circulate. And things like that are the reason that people tend to dislike T channels, whether they watch them or not, because they're like, if you would just slow down and actually think critically about a story before announcing it to the world, there would be a lot less misinformation going around about certain creators. And they also tend to have a habit of bickering with certain creators on Twitter when the creator doesn't like whatever the T channel had to say. Rather than just ignoring them and going on with their day, T channels tend to fight back, which again has some positive and negative aspects to it. For a while, no matter what kind of content Belle was putting out there, she was not one who would sit there and fight with people on Twitter. She might bite back a little bit, but she wasn't sitting there having full-on wars the way that Nick Snyder has with like Gabby Hanna and stuff. She was just like, I've said my piece and I'm going to go on with my day. Now, where did the shift happen? Belle went from basically being the commentary community's absolute darling to someone that most of them have wanted to distance themselves from. What happened and when did it happen to create such an enormous shift in how people think about her? Because that is quite a difference, going from everyone always talking about how much they love and respect her and how she's doing good work on YouTube that Chris Hansen should have done and the FBI should have done to help people. What happened? Why did people start hating her so much? I think 100% of this happened with not the fact that she chose to discuss Eugenia Cooney, because people have been discussing her forever, but it's how she chose to discuss her. When it comes to any creator, not just Eugenia, literally any creator who has some kind of health impairment, whether they're disabled, whether they have mental illness, whether they have a physical illness, it doesn't matter. If they are struggling with some kind of ailment, you have to be very, very cautious of how you go about discussing that person, especially about how you go about discussing whatever is plaguing them at the time, because there is a proper way to go about discussing someone's ailment that they're struggling with, and then there's, I'm just sensationalizing this or making wild speculations and theories without knowing the truth, and that can severely damage the person that you are speaking about. Now, in order to kind of illustrate this better, I'm going to compare how people discuss Eugenia with how they discuss Britney Spears, because a lot of the same people seem to kind of overlap with them. And I think it's that kind of Rapunzel in the Tower mentality, the way people see both of them. So with Britney, a majority of the people who regularly talk about, how her case is going, how her life's going, what she's posting on social media, all that good stuff, they're very sympathetic, they're very kind. They don't generally bring up the issue she struggled with when she first got the conservatorship, as in like her bashing the one guy's car in and stuff. Like, they tend to kind of stay away from that negative side, or if they do discuss it, they talk about how, well, yeah, it wasn't great that she did that to that paparazzo, but here's the list of excuses as to why it happened. And they are very quick to defend her actions and anything she ever did, that, like the shaving her head, all of it. They're quick to defend her and say, had she not been in the horrible living conditions we know she was in and family life, this probably wouldn't have happened. And I say, that is more than fair enough to make that assumption through Britney's own testimony and just what we've seen over time. All of that is absolutely true and factual. She has told the world and a judge that yes, the home she was in at the time that she bashed up that car, it wasn't a great environment for her. It was not a mentally safe environment for her to be in, and that she was going through a lot at the time because her family was taking all of her hard-earned money and treating her badly. And she's like, everything you guys speculated was true. This is why it is appropriate to discuss the ugly side of everything that's happened to Britney Spears. We have absolute facts. We know everything that has happened, so no one has any issues with it when someone says, I'm going to do a video on Britney Spears and her conservatorship, and I'm going to be bashing her dad, because everyone knows her dad's a terrible person. We have proof of that. And unfortunately, this is where things kind of start to go AWOL when it comes to people talking about Eugenia Cooney. It doesn't take a doctor to look at Eugenia Cooney and say, this person doesn't look terribly healthy. A lot of people for a long time speculated she had some kind of ED. Some people would try to argue it and say things like, oh, well, it could be some kind of invisible illness or something that we don't know about, and it's her life. She is not obligated to discuss those things with her. And I say, yes, absolutely. No creator is ever obligated to discuss what their health issues are with their audience, no matter what that issue is. If she ever feels comfortable coming forward and saying, yes, this is what I have, or no, this is not what I have, that is up to her and no one else. No one should be forcing anybody into discussing these things. And we've seen that it clearly causes her emotional distress, because in one of her live streams on Twitch, she made that very, very clear. She had been inundated that day in particular, for some reason. I think it was after the underpants flash accident thing in one of her videos. She was just getting nonstop inundated by people commenting that they wanted her kicked off the platform, that she wasn't safe for children to be watching, that she was hurting people, that they wanted her to get help, and she broke down. It stressed her out to the point where she had an actual breakdown on camera where she was crying and like begging everyone to stop. And that kind of thing is where this gets kind of inexcusable. Yes, unfortunately, just like with Britney, we do have proof that Eugenia does have an ED, whether she wants to admit it right now or not. And that proof was in the Shane Dawson documentary, because during the documentary, he mentioned her having one, and she didn't say the exact words, but she said enough that she basically admitted to it. And in some of her videos after that, when she was recovering still, she admitted to having problems with that in the past that she was working on. Now, one of the issues from the outside in with EDs is that, like any other mental illness, there is a vast array of reasons for why someone could accidentally fall off the wagon, so to speak, and back out of recovery and go back to whatever was causing issues for them at the time. Clearly, she is no longer in recovery. Clearly, she is struggling right now, and she's kind of looking worse than she ever did in the past. And it's unfortunate. She seems like a really sweet person, and whether she was sweet or not, I don't think anyone deserves to be struggling this way. However, the problem is, because she has so many eyes on her, everyone has decided to make it their business why she is no longer recovered. Not just that she isn't, but why. We need to know what's going on. What's the big scoop? What's the story behind why Eugenia is losing weight again? And that is wildly inappropriate. And this circles back to some of the reason why people are so upset with Belle Aubry right now, because if she had simply decided to do one of her usual videos where she sits there and she explains that she is taking pity on a certain creator or a certain person because she knows they're going through a lot. And if she had maybe asked Eugenia, are you comfortable with sitting down for an interview with me, and spoke to her like a real human being and not like a cardboard cutout sitting behind her, I think there wouldn't have been as much of a problem. And the thing is, maybe Eugenia would have said, no, I'm not comfortable doing an interview, and that is her business. She doesn't have to be comfortable with it. If she had gone about it respectfully and explained that she feels for her, that, you know, she understands completely what Eugenia is going through because she's had disordered eating herself in the past, and she understands that it can be really difficult. If she had just left it at all that stuff, that part of her videos has been fine. There's nothing wrong with trying to help your audience understand something by relating it to your own experience. There's nothing wrong with sympathizing with someone because you can relate what they're going through to your own experience. But here is the thing about Belle's videos that has been irking me that I haven't seen enough people discussing. It is how she chose to go about talking about Demi Lovato and the Froyo incident versus Eugenia Cooney. This is where an enormous amount of hypocrisy I've noticed has come from. When she was discussing what happened with Demi Lovato, she made a point, like a lot of other creators, to express the fact that she felt that Demi Lovato owed that Froyo place an enormous apology, and that she needed to do whatever it took to try to help them get back whatever business they may have been ruined from because of what Demi chose to say. She made a point of saying, I sympathize with the fact that Demi is struggling with an ED, but her triggers are her business to deal with. You can't expect the people around you to know everything that's going to trigger you. You can't expect the world to just magically not have whatever's going to trigger you. It is your responsibility to deal with your triggers on your own because they are yours. She made a point of saying this, and I agree. As someone who has trauma and as someone who does get triggered by certain things that sometimes can happen out in public and sometimes only happen in my home, I am very aware that whether I'm just sitting at home with my partner or a friend or something, or whether I'm on public, if something triggers me, it is not the responsibility of those friends or family or strangers around me to deal with it. I am the one who needs to deal with it because it's my trigger. It's none of their business. And so yes, Demi saying, oh, well, the way they chose to label a froyo or whatever stupid thing it was triggered me. So I decided to basically almost get them shut down. Yeah, that was totally inappropriate and inexcusable. And I agree with Belle that they needed to do something about that. However, when it comes to Eugenia, suddenly it's a completely different set of rules. When Belle watches Eugenia, she is clearly triggered by her. She's even admitted that Eugenia Cooney triggers her own ED and triggers her into going into relapse, basically. And that is not her fault. That's nobody's fault. You never know, exactly what's going to trigger you and how badly it's going to trigger you. But her response to this is, because she has triggered my ED to come back, and I've seen her trigger other people's EDs into coming back because of, her photos or her content on YouTube or whatever, she should be kicked off of YouTube. She's basically gone out and fully said that. She has stated that because Eugenia Cooney's content has triggered her into relapse and has triggered other people into relapse, she should be, kicked off of the main platform that she gets money from, money that could potentially one day help her with her recovery if she decides to go back. And this is so hypocritical to me. It really irks me because I'm like, so Demi Lovato is someone that you don't really feel any way about. You don't, love them, but you don't hate them either. they got triggered. They got their ED triggered by something out in public that, that place didn't expect to trigger anyone with just a label. And because of that, you come down on them and say, hey, you need to be responsible for your own triggers. Stop blaming other people. But when the shoe's on the other foot, when it's you getting triggered, it's the opposite. Now Eugenia can't be online anymore because she's triggering you. Now Eugenia can't be online and get a living anymore because you don't like how she's making you feel. And instead of doing what most people would do and simply blacklisting her so you don't have to see any of her content, you continue to consume it to have content for your channel and bitch endlessly about the fact that she's upsetting you. That doesn't make any sense. This is why people are mad at her, because of how hypocritical she's been. She used to be one of the good ones. Now she's an absolute hypocrite, because if it's somebody else, they need to just, deal with their own triggers. But if it's her, you need to deal with it. You're suddenly the one who's responsible for not hurting her feelings or upsetting her or causing her to relapse, and that is not fair. Her relapse is not Eugenia Cooney's problem to deal with. It's her own problem to deal with. Same with me. I like Eugenia as a person. I think she's a sweet person. I don't want to aid in her being harmed in any way, as in, like giving money to her. But I do know I have certain days where my old ED can rear its ugly head. On those days, I choose not to consume anything from Eugenia Cooney. I choose to stay far away from it, because I know if I'm having a day where something's already bothering me, probably not the best timing to be looking at someone that tiny. And I just ignore it. It's that simple. I just don't look at any of it. I either blacklist her, or I just, don't go on social media that day because I don't feel well anyway. If I'm having a day where I'm doing okay with it though, and I think I'm not going to have any, relapse type problems, then I check in. I see how she's doing at the time, and if there's any, news on her going back into recovery or anything. It really is that simple. I don't know why Belle has made it this huge thing that it never needed to be, and start like a one-woman army against this poor girl. And like I said, just honestly, the hypocrisy is what is bothering me the most. I don't like that the Demi thing wasn't even that long ago, and she was so on board with the whole your triggers are your own thing. But the second Eugenia made her relapse, it was her fault. It gives me the whole Eugenia is making me relapse in my ED, so I don't want her online because, she's going to harm the children. Gives me the same energy as when I was in high school. That was the height of my mental illness. That's when I was doing the worst in my entire life. And it's giving me the vibe of the people in my life who said that if I didn't just suddenly not feel suicidal anymore, if I didn't stop cutting immediately, or if I didn't just stop having depression, they were going to stop being my friend. And you know what happened then when these people said that stuff to me? I got worse, because I was like, well, I've got nothing to lose now. I'm just making everyone around me miserable anyway. So what's the point in carrying on? It's counterproductive. Okay, so say that you're successful. Say that you get Eugenia banned from YouTube. She can no longer be monetized. She can no longer post any kind of content, and everything that exists on her channel gets completely wiped out. Say that your absolute dream comes true and all of that happens to her. Number one, you're not getting rid of all content of her, because look at what's happened with anyone who has left the platform, like completely. People just re-upload it. Do you really think as long as Eugenia Cooney has been on the internet, people don't have full archives of everything she's ever put out on the internet? Of course they do. You can still find her old YouNows and stuff, for fuck's sake. People will still re-upload it. There will be several channels of nothing but Eugenia Cooney's old content, because they know that they're going to get views and money from it. So you already didn't succeed on that front, because you're still going to be plagued by constantly seeing videos of her from re-uploaders. So no point in it for that. Now, let's go with your whole, oh, the children, think of the children excuse. She's harming minors. Yes, I think it's very unfortunate and very sad that there have actually been some young girls who have told people like Belle that looking at Eugenia's content made them want to look just like her. That's sad. But again, as somebody who has struggled with this myself in the past, taking Eugenia offline is not going to magically make that girl not want to look like her. One, the memory of her is still in her mind. Two, like I said, re-upload. Her photos, her videos, everything's still going to be all over the internet. If that girl wants to seek it out, she will still seek it out. And three, trust me, if someone is that far into their ED already, Eugenia Cooney is not the only thing they're going to be looking at. They're going to be looking at pro-Ana content. They're going to be looking on Tumblr at really skinny girls and stuff and trying to look just like them. There is other content they're going to be consuming to try to get an idea of how they want to look, what their ideal body type is. So no, this girl isn't going to magically just be all better now. She's just going to look elsewhere for that content. Eugenia's become a scapegoat, honestly. We could just be ignoring her and, not consuming her content and hoping eventually that she will just get help when she's ready to. But instead, you're shining a spotlight on her. You're making it so that more and more people who weren't aware of her now are aware of her and actively seek her content, which means that actually you're probably the one causing more relapses than anyone by letting them know where to find this content. And frankly, again, I don't think it's anyone's business what someone's health condition is or why they have it. She may have in the past kind of admitted that she had an ED. But where I think things get really inappropriate is when people are assuming why. Like I said, with Britney Spears, she has full on admitted her dad and her sister are the problem. We have confirmation of this from her own mouth. Eugenia has said nothing about her family life. Even if she so much as says hello to her mother during a Twitch stream, everyone jumps into these wild speculations of, oh, her mother must be abusing her, her mother must not be letting her eat, her mother is this horrible person. So I was just editing this video and a thought occurred to me that while I'm discussing Eugenia's mother, there's a potential that people could misunderstand what I'm trying to say. I am in no way condoning the bad things that we do know Eugenia's mother has done. It is wrong that she's kind of infantilized her in a way and that she has kind of put her in a position where it's harder for her to get help. However, what I'm trying to explain is that we do not live in their home. We do not see their everyday dynamic. Therefore, we cannot make judgment calls and know exactly what happens. I'm just trying to say, see it from both sides that, yes, while it is wrong that her mother isn't kind of sending her into some kind of mental health facility to help her out with her problems, there could be a reason that's difficult for her, and until we walk a mile in her shoes, there's no way for us to really understand what that feels like. So just understand, I'm not trying to say like, oh, just side with Eugenia's mother and feel bad for her. I'm just trying to say, understand it from both sides. The Jacqueline Glenn stuff did not help that, but you have to remember that Jacqueline Glenn had only encountered Eugenia's mother a tiny handful of times. She was not at this girl's house every weekend or anything. I think she went over to see her like 2 or 3 times her entire life. So you have to remember that even though she has a slightly different outlook on this than we do, she does not know everything. It's still a lot of speculation, and she's looking at it from a point at which Eugenia's mother caused her some kind of trauma. It was a very bad day for everyone. Eugenia's mother felt like her child was being attacked or hurt by her friends, and Jacqueline felt attacked and hurt by Eugenia's mother. It was just an unfortunate situation for everyone involved that day. And I can understand why Jacqueline might feel a certain way about this woman after experiencing something like that, but that was her experience with her, not Eugenia's. For all we know, everything Eugenia says about her mother being really loving and wonderful and actually being one of the people who is most worried about her and trying to get her into recovery could be true, but we've all just formed so many wild theories over the years because we just desperately need an explanation as to how it happened, why did it happen, that we just threw this girl's family completely under the bus for it. And I don't think that's fair until Eugenia actually says something with her own mouth. It is not up to us to speculate how involved her mother is with this. If her mother is currently the person who is helping her the most, in her real life, like actually actively helping her and telling her, honey, you need to eat an apple today or something, then taking her away from her could be devastating for Eugenia. And Belle, unfortunately, has definitely not been helpful with this stuff. She's definitely made her own speculations on Eugenia's family life, and that is something that we may never fully understand. We see a tiny portion of every creator's life, less than 10% in most cases, even if they're a daily vlogger. We only see them when they want us to see them. For all we know, there's potentially some nights where Eugenia Cooney is just sitting in her mother's arms crying because she doesn't feel well and she doesn't know how to help herself. And for all we know, her mom could be the one petting her hair, holding her, telling her everything will be okay and that they'll get her help when she's ready. We don't know. We're not there. She doesn't broadcast those moments because she doesn't have to, and she's not comfortable broadcasting them. Her mother might call her grandmother or her aunt or uncle or something and talk about how worried she is of her child, and Eugenia doesn't broadcast this stuff because she isn't comfortable broadcasting it, and that's fine. If it turns out that Eugenia's mother truly is an enormous source of comfort for her, and we've demonized this woman in our minds and take her away from her, that could make her completely collapse and ruin any future hope of recovery for this girl. And that's stuff that I wish people like Belle would just pay attention to and try to understand already. We don't know. We know one person's traumatic experience at one specific traumatic point in time. That's all we know of this girl's mother. It's none of our business to speculate. I know this will potentially be a hot take and potentially something a lot of people don't want to hear, but I honestly think an enormous part, in my opinion, of why Eugenia may not be doing well is what she actually said on that live stream. I think she told you the answers you've been seeking. Everyone keeps trying to speculate and find out, why did she relapse? What's going on? Is there a family life? Why is she suddenly losing weight again? I think she was being completely, brutally open and honest that night. I think it is because of how people treat her. I think that she gets stressed out because of the fact that her entire online presence is people speculating about her life and her home life, and I think that it freaked her out really bad and made her recovery more difficult because of what a magnifying glass people had over her. I think her initial relapse isn't as black and white as people try to make it out. Relapses can happen for any reason and no reason. I had a relapse in my mental health at one point and everything was going well for me. It just happens sometimes when you struggle with mental illness. There doesn't have to be some grand reason for it, and that's something that a lot of mentally well people don't seem to understand. She might have just relapsed because she relapsed, and that's it. There's no extra added onto it. She just happened to relapse at that point in time. And she's probably struggling more and more to get back to where she was when she was recovering because of how nasty everyone is to her. When you're under stress, whatever your coping mechanism is for your mental illness gets more and more intense because you're like, I just need this. I need whatever is going to make me feel better. And if for her that's not eating, we're making her worse. It's our fault then. And I'm sure hearing nothing but people saying awful things about her family isn't helping. I've been talking for more than long enough now, though. So, to wrap this up, I think that Eugenia Cooney seems like a really sweet and wonderful person. So, I truly hope that whatever is ailing her ceases to be a part of her life sooner than later. And as far as Belle goes, if she has any hope of going back to being considered a commentary channel and not a tea channel, I truly hope that she does some inner reflection of the hypocrisy of her content and how she thinks about people. I hope that she apologizes to Eugenia and to her audience, listens to criticism in the future, and that she too is no longer ailed by whatever is ailing her. But until next time, do something that makes you happy today, no matter what anyone else thinks about it. And I'll see all of you again soon.